First off, thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in to the Public Works Podcast. It means a lot. I'm here just trying to help everybody tell their story in the space. Also, I am looking for more interviewees. So if you are that person, or if you know somebody who needs to tell their story just so a youngster can hear it and be attracted to the industry, please reach out to me. Click the link below and we'll get you set up for an interview. Again, if you want to be on the Public Works Podcast, or if you know somebody that needs to be on the Public Works Podcast, tag them in the comments below. Last but not least, if you're trying to figure out what Vitendo Training Solution is, I'll explain it to you in the most simplified way. If you've ever been on YouTube and watched a video on how to operate a piece of equipment that you own, or how to fix a piece of equipment that you own, that is what we come out and do for your city or for your department. Hopefully that makes sense to you. Looking forward to talking to you soon. Now enjoy the show. Thank you. Welcome. This is the Public Works Podcast. My name is Joseph Blackman. Today, we got a real treat for you. His name is Carl Valdez, and he is a retired public servant. We're going to get into all of his titles, all of his labels, all of the stuff that he has his hands in a second. But Carl, say what's up to everybody.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Thank you. Thanks for inviting me, and thanks for letting me be on.
Sure. Carl, how you and I met, we were on a deal years ago, but you're one of those guys that you just keep seeing people around the industry and in the industry, and you could tell that a lot of people gravitate towards you. A lot of people like you. And it's like, I got to get that guy on the show, man. I got to hear his story. And the catalyst behind starting the podcast is that not a lot of you guys get a microphone put in front of your face for good stuff. It's always, oh, there's a flood or there's a construction going on. It's pissing everybody off. What's going on? But I just like to talk about the good stuff. Hey, Carl, thanks for hopping on the show. We're going to hit the rewind button in a second, but let's get into what you're doing today. So what's your role today? What is it? Precision concrete cutting?
That's correct. So I retired from public service at the end of 2020, 2.5 years ago. And upon retirement, I knew I didn't want to just stay at home and watch TV all day. So I knew I wanted to work part-time with somebody. And I was a customer of Precision Concrete Cutting for about 6 years prior. And I knew the owner, Joseph Ortega, really well. And I got to talking to him and I said, hey, what do you think about, is there a position that you could use me for? I don't even know what you would need me for. I'm not a salesman, but I do know your services. And what do you think? So we discussed it. We discussed it with one of the owners, and they developed a position for me in the sales department where I just go out and open the doors, use my connections with the MSA, the Maintenance Superintendents Association, and just being a client in the Bay Area, knowing a lot of different superintendents and managers in the area. And so I just started to develop meetings. I started doing presentations, and that's pretty much my role now. I go to trade shows, I operate our booth, and also with the APWA and MSA, I do presentations for large groups as well. So that's pretty much my role. And I also mentor and train the other sales staff on what it's like from the inside. What are the public works public agency people thinking? Why are they not returning my phone call in January when it's been raining for the last 4 weeks? You know, why are they concerned about purchasing? Who do we need to talk to in the agency? So I mentor them through all that because I've had 35 plus years in public works. I let them know what the process is. And so I've been actually training our sales staff nationwide. So Precision Concrete Cutting is a franchise, and we have 48 franchises in North America alone. So our corporate office has asked me to train other franchises on that process as well. So I go through what's the best time of year to talk to them, what's the budget cycle like. So I've been very effective in that role.
Gosh, that's invaluable, having somebody to mentor a sales crew on those types of topics. Because I'm sure the guys know sales, but you got to know how a city operates and all that. It's a whole other world. So let's get into kind of your backstory. What got you into public works in the first place? I see the music behind you. You could have been on tour with, was it Van Halen or Snoop Dogg? I'm not sure which route you went, but you got into public works, and I guess I want to know what was the catalyst behind both. What got you into music, and then also what got you into public works?
So I am a lifelong musician, started playing clarinet at the age of 9. And then I discovered the drums at the age of 12 or so. And at that time, the first time I sat behind a drum set, I just knew I wanted to be a rock star.
Oh, okay. Quick story. I thought I wanted it because my church, our drummer had to leave for a little bit, so we didn't have a drummer. So I'm like, all right, I can hold a beat. So I bought some drums. I got them on Amazon. They came in. I set everything up. It was probably an hour later. I put them all back in the box and shipped them right back to Amazon because I just knew that wasn't me. So what was it that like got you glued to the drums? Because the drums are interesting. It's like practicing is tough. It's hard to play by yourself. They're loud. So what got you into drums?
I don't know what really gravitated to me. I think I just naturally liked the air drum at a young age. And I remember when I first asked my parents for a drum set, we didn't have a lot of money. We were a family of minimal means. And I just started air drumming, and I kept asking my parents for a drum set, and they said, we can't afford it. And so I made my own drum set. My brother found a set of bongos, and I used a book for a snare drum, and I used a hubcap for a cymbal. And I made stands out of Tinker Toys, and I used pencils for drumsticks. That's a true story. On my 13th birthday, I came home from school and there was a drum set sitting in my room. I had always just naturally had that basic drum rhythm. I'm not a good dancer, though. My wife could tell you that I'm a horrible dancer, but I know how to keep a beat. And I just started listening to music. I had older brother and sisters who listened to what we consider classic rock from the 60s and 70s at a very young age. And I just kept with it. And in my earlier years, from the age of 13 to probably 19, I played minimally, and it's not an exaggeration, 4 hours a day. I just played all the time. As soon as school was over, I was playing until dinner time, do my homework, play for another hour.
Wow.
On the weekends, it was probably 6-8 hours a day. I just played all the time. So in my mind, I thought I just wanted to be a rock star. That was just the natural progression of doing all this. I didn't know how to become a rock star. I just wanted to become one. To answer your question of how I got into public works or how it worked together with both, my father was a lifelong public servant. He fought in 3 U.S. wars. He fought in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. And after he retired from the military, he worked for the Department of Defense in Point Mugu Missile Air Test Center in Ventura County. So our life was always based around public service. And in the community we lived right outside of Port Hueneme Naval Base in Ventura County. 90% of the people there had a connection to the Navy base. So public service was just a normal part of life in that part of town where we grew up. So I knew it was there. But I always knew I wanted to be a rock star, but my parents didn't know how to develop me into being a rock star or anything. So as I got older, my mother had always told me I needed something to fall back on. You know, she encouraged my music playing. They let me practice all the time, but she always said, yeah, you got to have a job to make a living. So as I started going to college, I just started taking drafting classes. So I just thought, I know how to do this, and I was good at it. So I kept taking drafting classes. And next thing you know, counselor calls me in. He says, hey, if you take 1 or 2 more classes, you can get your certificate in drafting. Then the drafting instructor lined me up with a job, my first public works part-time job with the county of Ventura, working in the surveying and mapping division. And that's where it all started. And I was still doing band stuff, music stuff along the way. Yeah. And that's how I got into public works, was just realizing I needed to have a job, but also influenced by my father and his service. Now, I really never appreciated that until many decades later, where I started incorporating my father's story. Yeah. But I didn't know anything about public works. I just knew about drawing. And then I learned from working at the county for a few years as in their mapping division. And I still did the band. Then we started the band, and the band became popular, and we started recording records. It's a whole mishmash of how it all worked out. I couldn't advise anybody the route that I went. I had some people who were very supportive on the public works side. If I could share real quick, when I first became a full-time employee with the city of Ventura as an engineering technician, I interviewed for the job, and I get it, and they're offering me the job, and the manager says, okay, when can you start? And I said, okay, I can start right away, but I need to let you know that our band just came out with our second album, and we have a tour booked for this summer. Is that going to be a problem? And he asked how long the tour was going to be, and I said probably only about 2 or 3 weeks. And this is like when he's offering me the job, and he tells me, we have a program here where you could buy some vacation time, and we have some sick leave that you could use, and whatever you don't use, you could just take that without pay. I was 21 years old, and here's the manager telling me how to keep my job after 4 months so I can go off and be a punk rock star. And he let me do it. And came back and still had the job. And had he had said, sorry, we can't do it, I still would have gone on tour. I can't say that I would have never had a public works career, but it would have delayed it. I don't know when the next time, and I don't even know if I would have been motivated to apply for another job, because I thought the band's doing what we're doing. And
what's so cool about that story is that he allowed you to follow your passion, chase your dream, do what you wanted to do. And I'm sure it allowed you to show up with a smile on your face to work.
Yeah.
It's because when work gets in the way of somebody's life, that's when somebody doesn't want to work. But when work is a part and intertwined and weaved within somebody's life, it makes it easier to work. Oh, I applaud that guy, whoever that guy was. Please still
Chuck Mink. Chuck Mink was his name. Yeah, he was and I've run into Chuck at APWA meetings along the years, and he's always asking me not just how I'm doing professionally, but he's always asking me how I'm doing musically.
Gotcha. Because that was going to be one of my questions, how you did both. Because I don't think they're a symbiotic, public works and being a drummer. I think they're kind of on the opposite ends. But is there ever a point where you're like, man, I got to just get out of the office and go rap some steel. I got to get out of here just to drum instead of looking at emails and leaning over AutoCAD.
Yeah. No, I would say I separated it pretty well. I was a very good engineering technician. I learned all about public works. I learned about engineering design. It wasn't like I could transfer that knowledge into music or using my music knowledge to transfer into public works. I think I separated them pretty well. But the thing about public works and engineering, when 5 o'clock comes around, you're not doing it at 9 o'clock at night, or you're not really doing it on the weekend. So it allowed for me to do my music. The challenging part was in those early years of the punk rock scene, we were going to Hollywood a few times a week. And so whether we're playing or we're seeing other bands play, coming home at 2 o'clock in the morning and having to be at work at 8 the next day, that got a little challenging, but I managed to make it work out. We would do weekend trips out of town, whether we're playing in the Bay Area or going to Arizona or Las Vegas. We worked it out. I will say the band was a little upset with me that I got a full-time job.
Of course.
Because if we were trying to make it, we just come out with a second album. And I remember one of the guys said, man, what are you getting a full-time job for? I said, I need a job, and I'll make sure it doesn't interfere with what we're doing. And for the most part, it did not.
Yeah.
And I kind of loved it too. I'm sure. None of them were really into the punk rock scene, but they were certainly just excited to hear the stories as well.
You said that there wasn't any transferable skills, and I might have to disagree with you on that, because if you're the type of person that can practice for 4 hours without being like, before you even had a band gig, like if you're just that, if that's in you, I'm sure that translated into what you did in engineering wise, public works wise. So if there's somebody out there listening who isn't a musician, they're a high level musician, what transferable skills could they see applying to the public works side of things?
I think you hit on that. Maybe I discredit myself too much. Is that, yeah, just the dedication, just the learning of the process. One of the things that I learned about drumming and relating it to other things is, and I did another interview and I talked about the game Monopoly. Okay, anybody who's playing Monopoly knows it's the same thing over and over again, right? You keep going around the board. I don't know how many times you go around the board in one game, 100, 300. I don't know what the number is, but it's pretty much the same thing. You tend to know all the nuances of the game. And so with drumming, it's the same thing. You're really doing the same thing over and over again with subtle nuances in a song, right? Maybe it might be a little faster, might be a little slower. You might do a drum fill, but it's basically the same thing. Once you relate it to engineering, there's only so many different kinds of projects that are out there. Now, no two are really alike, but so many of them are very similar. So I think the thing that relates and transfers to both is just the dedication and the patience, and know that there is going to be a great product at the end of it. And then once that's done, you got to get on the next one.
Yeah, yeah.
That's probably the thing I learned the most and was able to transfer between both.
Gotcha. And so you're in public works for X amount of years, and then you're coming to retirement. Does that allow you to do more of the drums, or is it, since you've been doing them together for so long, you've taken a step back on the drums? So what are you doing now in regards to the music side of things?
Okay, there were very few years where I wasn't doing both in my entire life.
Wow.
So near the end, after we retired, my wife and I relocated from San Jose area up to Folsom, which is up here in the Sacramento area. And it wasn't before long, and I thought, I want to start giving drum lessons. So I started getting more into teaching. In the last 4 or 5 years before I retired, I was doing more teaching, and I was instructing at School of Rock. The School of Rock is a franchise all throughout the country, inspired by the movie, the history of it, the movie School of Rock, where we just teach kids how to be rock stars. It's a performance art school. They have kids from as young as 5 years old all the way into 17. We actually have adult programs as well. And so I was teaching in that level. When you are a student at School of Rock, you have one private lesson a week and one group lesson a week. So you learn your instrument, but you also learn how to be in a band. And that's where I became an asset with the school, because I've had so much band experience. Most all the other instructors are working musicians or people who've had multiple master's degree in music, not as much experience in working, because they're all younger. They're all in their 20s and 30s, and they're really just trying to make it, where I'm the older guy who's done it, and I just want to give back to the music community.
Yeah, and you talked about one thing I kind of want to park on, and it's the skill of being in a band. Because we, like engineering, like I'm sure you figure out how to do X, Y, and Z in whatever type of engineering there is. Like you learn the actual task, but there's a task outside of just drumming, and that is being in a band. Like you have a bass guitar, you have a lead guitar, you got a wind guy, you got another string guy, maybe you got a lead singer, a couple lead singers, maybe a backup. What would you say is some advice for, not necessarily in music, but even public works, or even life in general, that a drummer, because like you told me before, a drummer's not sole job, but a drummer's job is to keep the band together. Like what's some tips and tricks and some advice for that?
So for me, that having that mindset of keeping a band together, you're relating it to an engineering office. It's really teamwork. There is no one person that does everything on one project. So when I was an engineering technician in our office, there's two different teams. One is the team of technicians, that we all want to make sure we're doing things in a consistent way. Me and my other colleagues, we developed a drafting standards for that city, and we had meetings with regards to how to deal with that and make sure that everybody's ideas were incorporated. And then you have your management staff, your supervisory staff that you need to develop a team with as well, because only we know our job, they know their job. How does it mesh together? I'm not there to take over the engineer's job, but I'm there to let them know, hey, here's what I know, and let's work together so we can come out with the best product at the end of the day, which is the same as in a band, whether you're performing or writing songs. Hey, I know the drums. I may not know the guitar real well. I know a little bit. Let's collaborate and let's come up with the best product possible and continue to move on to project after project. This is interesting because I've never really talked about it in that way before. So kudos to you for reaching that into me. But there are a lot of similarities because it's just really all about team building. And one of the things that I became, I don't want to say an expert in, but I really hang my hat on it, is that I really became a very good team building asset person. From my years in engineering, we used to do, in our office, we used to do Halloween skits every year. We had a skit, our city had a skit competition. It was fun while we did it, but I never really realized the value of it until later on. One of our director talked to me about it, and he said that, I know we spend a lot of time doing these Halloween skits, but the time that we spend developing a team is money well spent and is more valuable than if we had gone to a team building event. And to this day, so this was in the early 90s. There's about 3 years where we had this solid team. To this day, many of those same employees, who all of us are all over the country, including Albert Carvin, who you had interviewed before, was part of that team. And we all remember those days. So fast forward when the director retired, he actually mentions, somebody was asking what the highlights of his career. There's a guy that was a public works director, 30, 40 years in the industry. He highlighted in his speech the time that we spent team building doing Halloween skits and mentioned me by name. He mentioned a few other things in his going away speech, but I was the only person he mentioned by name. This same person, he's legendary in the APWA. He was past national president a couple of years ago. His father, I believe, was one of the founding members of APWA. So he had traveled around the country talking about working from the bottom, leading from the bottom. That was his topic, leading from the bottom or leading from within. And he would mention me in his speech around the country. Now, the reason I found out is because some of my colleagues who would be in other parts of the country would be at his presentations, and they would call me or text me in the middle of the presentation and said, hey, I'm at this presentation given by Ron Calkins, and he's talking about you. And so I guess my niche ended up being team building. So I guess with a band, whether it's a sports team, whether it's an office, having a good cohesive team is the groundwork for success, and is something that I was able to bring into an office.
Sure. And from my limited knowledge of the drums or percussionists, is that you're setting the pace of the song, like how fast it goes, how slow it goes. If something goes too fast, the lead guy will look back at the drummer and be like, dude, chill out, man. It's coming in too hot. So I'm sure that translated over to your team building, your leadership aspect of you setting the pace for the team, you setting the pace for the department. So another thing I wanted to go over was, when you retired, you got back into the private side of things. So what was that transition like? Because you've been on the public side for years and years, and now you're selling back to the public side. So has it been an easy transition? Do guys look at you and go, hey, you're on the wrong side of the fence now? What's going on?
All of that. I don't know if it was an easy transition. There was obviously the product and the service I was very well aware of. So that was easy to talk about. for me. So somebody mentioned to me earlier recently, and I was telling, yeah, I've never really been much of a salesperson. I've always worked in public works or did my band. And someone just corrected me. Somebody who knew me for a while said, no, Carl, you've been a salesman your whole life. Yeah, whether I'm selling for a company, a product, doesn't matter. I'm still selling the idea. But it goes back into team building and leadership. I'm selling concepts to people, which I've been doing my entire life. So that part was easy. I think the challenging part was not working full time to being part time. How do you handle that? The other thing is there's a distinct difference between how private companies work and a public company, talking about business profits and all those other kind of things. Cities certainly are concerned about funding and budgets, but not at the same, I don't think not at the same level as a private business would be. The other thing too is because I work part-time, I technically clock in, and I hadn't clocked in anywhere since I worked at an auto parts store when I was 19.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit different too. And then just getting the mindset out of it to where the last 15 years of my career, I was a public works supervisor, manager, superintendent. So just because the day is over, you're still concerned about weather, rainstorms, potholes, things like that. So my mind was geared toward working 24/7, especially during a rain event, which is what California had during this last winter. I remember when during those rainstorms, I would tell my wife or other colleagues that days like this, I don't miss. I'm thankful for the people who are taking care of it, but when I was working, that was all we thought about. We
Yeah.
just thought, do we have enough people? Are there trees down? Do we have all the storm drains cleared out? Did we do all the prep? Do we have enough traffic control? Who's on call? It was all those things. And that was the biggest relief after retirement, was not having to worry about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. One thing I wanted to commend you for, what I really appreciate about you is being able to grab attention. Because ever since I first met you, you're the guy that you'll be wearing. You have a tie-dye shirt on now. You have a fedora that has music notes on it. I think I saw you in a kilt one time. I'm like,
Oh
who is
yeah,
this guy?
she did.
So, and my thing is, since I have my own business, and it's all about setting yourself apart from obscurity. Like most businesses suffer from obscurity. Nobody really knows who you are, what you do, because you're not standing out. And I appreciate how you stand out, how you intentionally do that. So what would you say is your catalyst behind that? And how is that, if somebody's listening to this, how would it help out their career if they did become that flower that stood out from the rest?
One of the things that I would say, if we're going to go into dime store psychology, I was the youngest of 4 kids. I think having to stand out for me was something I needed to do personally my entire life, because my brothers and sisters were older, and I think, hey, I need to be the one who's out there. I needed some kind of attention. Not that they didn't have enough attention, but it's different when you're the youngest.
Sure. Yeah.
But the hat and the shirt, 2 different stories behind it. I was a baseball cap guy from the age of probably 14 to the age of 49. I wore ball caps 99% of the time. I just always wore ball caps. I had a collection. I usually have about anywhere between 50 to 80 different hats. I rotate at a time. Okay. And then after those wore out, I bring another set. I can show you my hat closet. There's easily 100 hats in there right now.
Wow. Yeah.
So when I turned 50, I decided, you know what? I'm going to start wearing fedoras. I found one, and then someone said, that looks good on you. So I ended up getting a collection. I have probably about 20 of them right now. And one of the catalysts behind it was I was out in the field once with my crew, paving crew. And, I'm wearing a baseball cap and everything. And I started to look down at myself, and I started thinking, I'm the supervisor here, and I look like everybody else. And I thought I should stand out. So I started wearing fedoras and stuff. So when someone came up to a job site, say, hey, who's in charge? My crew guy, that guy over there with the hat. Yeah. So that's the story of the hat. Now with the shirt, This is a funny story.
Yeah, it's a polo,
Um,
not a t-shirt, everybody. It's a
yeah,
tie-dye polo. He spent some
yeah.
money on this, so go ahead.
When I was at one agency, they had a rule, which was weird, but okay, it's the rule. We weren't allowed to wear blue jeans. This was in a maintenance yard too, and we couldn't wear blue jeans. That was the city manager said, no blue jeans for anybody. And I remember I wore them one day because I saw another manager wear blue jeans one day. So I thought, oh, she's wearing jeans. I'm going to wear jeans this Friday. I don't have any meetings. I don't have to go to City Hall. I'm just going to wear jeans. And I thought it was fine. And day goes on, and my manager calls me in, and we're talking about something else. He goes, oh, by the way, don't wear jeans again. I said, oh, okay. And he kind of reminds me, we can't wear jeans. I said, oh, just wore jeans the other day. And I just thought it was okay. And he said, oh, yeah. And I'm going to talk to her manager about that too. So my rebellious attitude was,
Of
okay,
course, yeah.
I can't wear blue jeans, but there's no rule about what kind of shirt I wear, right? I saw this at a street fair. My wife and I actually have matching outfits. She has a dress with the same exact
Okay.
material, same exact pattern. So from that point on, I just started looking for the loudest shirts that I could buy. And so from that part of my career, probably about 5 years, all of my shirts were something really flashy print, tie-dye. I've got a decent collection of tie-dye shirts and other different print shirts, Hawaiian shirts. I just refused to wear a muted down shirt for about 5 years.
Love it. Love it.
But
We need
also
more people like you.
yeah, well, going back to that's my personality was like, hey, I'm going to stand out. I'm not afraid to be that fashionable. I'm not trying to make a fashion statement. As far as kilts go, I have a kilt collection too. I played in a Scottish bagpipe band as a drummer for better part of 10 years. I've been in multiple bands. So every band you go in, you get a new kilt. I've bought other kilts. I think I have about 7 or 8 kilts now. They're comfortable. So you may see me out in a kilt at an event just because that's
All
what I
right.
do. And so now I'm the guy with the kilt, I'm the guy with the tie-dye shirt, or I'm the guy with the hat. And
Love it.
and I'm okay with that.
But you know what? And one thing I learned is about it's Muhammad Ali, Terrell Owens. They talked about talking trash. Like when you're the guy that talks a lot of trash on the field, on the court, in the boxing ring, you have to be the guy that puts in the work, like to back it up, right? So
Right.
I can tell that since you dress loud and you like the attention, you're still highly competent at what you do. Because what if you were like you're a standout guy, everybody knew you, but you were terrible at your job. You didn't get stuff turned in on time, you couldn't execute this, you couldn't follow through on that. So it's like, why stand out? So I appreciate you still being competent at what you do and also having the fortitude to stand out and set yourself apart.
I think it comes with that. I don't think you could wear this type of clothing if you weren't a confident person to
Yeah.
do that, or like I said, competent to where you're actually making up for something else in another area. Because
Yeah.
if you're that
Yeah.
bad employee or whatever, not a competent employee, that's going to show up real fast. And I
Yeah.
don't know, maybe 20, 30 years ago, I would have never been that person. And more in the last 10, 15 years have I decided this is how I'm going to dress and this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah, yeah, like it. So let's fast forward to MSA. You're a part of MSA. I'm a part of MSA. I saw you at a couple events before. So tell us what you're doing with the MSA or Maintenance Superintendents Association now, and then what office have you held in the past?
So right now, I'm the past president of the Redwood Empire chapter. Redwood Empire is up in Marin and Sonoma County. I'm also the past president of our foundation. That's our 501c3 charitable foundation that helps funds the scholarship and education programs. And I'm also an instructor in our MSA online education program. So still very involved with the MSA in my retirement years. I'm also still a delegate on our executive board that represents all of the chapters throughout the entire state of California and Arizona as well. But my history of the MSA goes back about, let me think, about 16 years ago when I first became a supervisor. I didn't know anything about the MSA, didn't know anything about maintenance. I remember first day on the job, my staff was telling me, are you going to join the MSA? You need to be part of the MSA. And I think, what is that? It's an organization for superintendents and supervisors, and your predecessor was, involved, and so was his, so everybody was involved. So you need to do that. It's like, all right, whatever. And my predecessor came back to do some cross training with me. He had retired, and the manager had asked him, can you come down and show Carl a few things while you're in town? He goes, yeah, I'll just show him. We'll go drive around and we'll just show him some things. So he spends 3 days with me. And on the first day, we're driving around. It's getting close to lunchtime. And he's, oh, we're going to go over here for lunch. I said, okay. So we go to this we're going to this restaurant, and there's a bunch of people there, and they're having a meeting. And it was actually an MSA chapter board meeting. And by surprise, he just took me there, goes, yep, this is what you're going to do. Now, I didn't join the board. I didn't join the board right away, but about a year later, I decided to get very involved and just went through all of the positions, starting at treasurer all the way to president within a few years, 3 or 4 years, however long it takes. And then I got involved with the executive board by accident. I went to an executive board meeting. They happened to have it in Ventura, where I was living. And I just wanted to go just to hear what it was like. I'm sitting on the outside just as a guest. And I didn't realize that meeting was the meeting where they elect the new officers. So they said, okay, we're taking nominations for treasurer. And the delegate from Ventura comes over to me and he says, hey, if we nominate you for treasurer, will you take the position? And it was at a time of my life where I thought, maybe this is good for me. And they said, okay. So they had somebody else drop off, resign on the spot so I could be the new delegate. And next thing they elected me treasurer. And I didn't even know everybody's name in the room. And here I am on the executive board. And 4 years later, I'm the executive board president. And a year after that, I ended up getting nominated and selected as the Peter Walsh Award recipient, which a Peter Walsh Award is the MSA's highest honor. It's like a Lifetime Achievement Hall of Fame for the MSA. They award one person every year at their banquet.
Wow.
And so I received that award in 2017 and just became immersed in the MSA. I'm proud to say I am pretty sure I'm the only one in the entire association that has an MSA tattoo. And
okay, that's cool, man.
The story behind it was when I was in Ventura on the chapter board, 2 of our chapter board members were MSA recipients, and they were my mentors, Rick Fulmer and Bob Morgenstern. And they well-deserved award for them. And I thought, I'm never going to be at a level where I'm going to get the Peter Walsh Award. But I told them, I joked with them, if I ever get this award, I'm going to get an MSA tattoo. Now, we all laugh about it. So fast forward, I don't know how many years later, it would have been at least 4 or 5 years later when I ended up getting it. The story starts going out that I had said, hey, I'm going to get this tattoo.
Accountability,
A couple people called me out on it. And I said, you know what? I'll get a tattoo. I'll get a tattoo of the MSA. This is a proud achievement. I just got the Peter Walsh Award, and I'm going to do it. So received the award that I've got a tattoo artist who has the artwork already. So if you don't mind, I could show it to you really quick.
Yeah, go for it.
I don't know if I can.
It's in a nice place. Yeah.
Oh,
wow. That's big too, man.
Yeah.
If you can't see it, it's the size of his whole side of his calf. So it's not like a little one.
No, we thought about doing it little, but there's so much detail in the
I was going to say that logo is pretty intricate.
Yeah, so there's so much detail in the logo that my tattoo artist said, it's not going to come out as well unless you do it bigger. I said, let's go for it. So
love it.
So still very involved with the MSA, help develop the foundation, like I said, which allows people to donate. Private businesses can usually have a tax write-off when they donate to an organization, but private individuals, never had that opportunity to donate to the MSA as a donor. So we developed it for that so we could have scholarships. And then we could combine everybody's donations so into an endowment fund so it could start earning the interest. Right now, the stock market isn't as great, so we're not earning as much. But when the stock market's really doing well, it was just growing and growing. So that's just how it
Nice.
works. Right now, we have a little bit over $200,000 in assets. We help supplement and fund the education program, which is another thing that I was involved with in getting started. And now I'm an instructor with that. And that's
Yeah, let's talk about that because you spoke on the education and you said that there's outside of the states where MSA is at, people are contacting you because the MSA serves a certain niche. You want to go in a little
right.
backstory on that?
Exactly. The program is designed for the maintenance worker or maybe even office worker who just wants to know a little bit more about public works. All of the classes are online, and there are usually about 12-week sessions, and we have over, I think we have 14 different topics that we have subject matter experts, people like myself, who just teach these classes. We're not accredited or accomplished instructors. We just have this experience and we want to share it with maintenance workers or office workers. People want to know a little bit more about public works. So the classes were being developed over the years. And the classes I teach are plans interpretation and supervision. Now, I developed the plans interpretation class. As said earlier, I've got an extensive background in drawing plans and managing plans. So it was a natural progression for me to do that class. And so we're able to keep the tuition at a low price. Right now, it's $100 per class. And whether some agencies reimburse the employees, some chapters are reimbursing the employees. We do it a few nights a week. Classes are only about 30, 45 minutes a class. And how it's starting to go nationwide is that we discovered that, or others have discovered, that there aren't very many programs like ours that cater to maintenance people, that is fully online and it's quality information. We're getting students. I actually have 2 students in this semester from Louisiana. I have had students from Texas, Idaho, Washington. I know some have had them from North Carolina. So as the veins of the public works industry spread out, they're just taking the classes wherever they can because all they need is a Wi-Fi connection to take our classes. So in this next year or so, we're actually applying to be a certified certification program through ANSI and ASTM. Again, federal government loves all these acronyms, so I don't know what they all stand for, but there's a
Right.
there's a department, and it's ANAB, ANAB, that they oversee the certification programs. So we are going to be applying for that within the next year or so. So then our program becomes a certificated program, and it'll be easier for public agencies to reimburse their employees for classes. And 2, some agencies are already using our program as a means for promotional opportunities. Just as in the water and wastewater industry, we know that they've got to get their distribution license or whatever, collections 1, 2, 3, and 4. Some agencies are saying, okay, if you want to go from a maintenance worker to a lead worker, you have to have so many MSA classes. And then to go from lead worker to supervisor, you need to have so many MSA classes or equivalent. So
Gotcha.
that was always our goal from the beginning, is to help it be a grading system for agencies to see who's putting the work in and who's learning more and more about the industry.
Yeah.
So,
Is that, would you say most time in the industry, is that kind of a good tell on who is trying to move up in their career? Is somebody who's going out, getting these CEUs, getting their accreditations, getting the certificates. Is that a good tell of who you would look for as a potential manager or supervisor?
Absolutely. So one of the presentations I've been doing with whether the APWA and the MSA is I do a presentation on interview skills, resume building and interview skills. And one of the things I talk about in the class is, or in the presentation is, you need to separate yourself from the pack. If you're doing everything that your agency says, guess what? So is the guy next to you. And so are 3 other people. You're not doing enough to separate yourself. And with the job market, I would say it's competitive today, but in history, it's been very competitive, that you need to separate yourself. And managers are looking for who is doing something extra than what is in the norm from 8 to 4 or 8 to 5 or whatever hours you want to include. Who's going out and says, hey, I want to learn more about this industry. I'm taking classes on my own. I am doing the more than the next guy. Because that's what I always tell people too. If you think you're doing enough, I guarantee somebody else is doing more. And it's not going to be an automatic, but I think managers do look at that and say, hey, this person's doing a little bit more than what we're requiring. I remember when I got one of the jobs that I've employed at, and I was talking to the manager after, why was I selected versus this other person that worked in-house? He's been working for you for 20 years, and I come in from the outside. And she told me the problem was with that candidate, he kept saying, oh, I'll get that. I'll do those things if I get the job. What are you going to do? Because the question would be, what are you going to do to make yourself better? I'll take that class when I get the job. And it was always in the future, where my answers were more of, I've been already studying this. I've been doing the work. I want to do things on my own because I know an agency, and this is what I like about the MSA, and not just our education program, but the MSA or professional organizations as a whole. You were learning things outside of your own public agency. And that's where you work public agency during regular 40 hours a week. You're going to learn what they tell you to learn. You're going to learn what they do there. But in order to be successful, you need to know what is going outside of that. What is going on? What is the city next door doing? What are they doing cross country? Where does it relate? And it's funny because it's relating back to my band years. When I first got into the band, I was just the drummer, but I still didn't go see a lot of concerts. I didn't go see a lot of bands play. So I didn't know what kind of style I was supposed to play because I was just figuring things out on my own. And it's funny because it was indicative because somebody said in one of the other interviews, hey, your first album on what you recorded versus what you recorded in your second album were like night and day. And they would ask band members, ask myself, what changed? What changed was I started seeing other drummers play.
Wow.
And I started seeing other bands and I'd start getting influenced or just seeing ideas. Oh, he did that kind of thing. I think I could incorporate that. So I would just learn from it. And then just talking to other drummers. That's what you do. So relating it to the public works field, whether it's APWA, MSA, CWEA, whatever organization it is, hearing what other people are doing will only help you be better because you're going to get one of two things out of it. One, you're either going to learn something from somebody else because they know they have more experience, or you're going to affirm to yourself that you do know what you're doing because you're doing something that somebody else isn't doing. But by the same token, you're helping them out by providing knowledge to them. What we do in public works, it's not all proprietary secrets where like nobody else gets to know what we're doing.
That's what I love about the public side is you guys aren't competing. Cupertino isn't competing against San Jose or Sunnyvale. Like you guys are like collaborating. You're trying to solve the same problem. So it's like, why not share that information? I love it. On the private side, it's a lot different.
And that became the history of the MSA. 50, almost 60 years ago, where a bunch of superintendents just wanted to start talking about issues. And 60 years later, we're still doing that. We talk about issues. What are you going through? How are you resolving it? I have this problem. Do you have any potential solution? So that's the purpose of these professional organizations, is so we can share this information. It's not just that we can network and get the next job. That's what happens, but it's so we can share information, so we're just make communities better everywhere and not just in our own little bubble.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Carl, I could go a whole another hour talking to you, but a couple of things I want to address before we got out of here. It was my burger question. So let's say I'm coming to Ventura and I text you ahead of time and I'm like, Carl, I know you live in Folsom and you haven't been you're back and forth from time to time, but I need the place where I can get the best burger in Ventura. Where are you going to send me?
The first thing I'm going to tell you is don't get a burger, get a burrito. Okay.
Burrito. Love it. Yeah.
Okay. I'm sure there's good burgers in town. I'm a burger guy, and I'm sure my Ventura locals who might be listening to this podcast and say, what do you mean, Carl? But I'm going to start the controversy here. I'm going to say, I'd have you get a burrito. Now, in Ventura specifically, there's a lot of Mexican takeout restaurants that there is a long-standing debate of who has the best burrito. So you can't go wrong, really. But my favorite burrito is from a family-owned restaurant called Corrales. There's two of them, and they're also on the same street, so you got to make sure you go to the right one. But Corrales Mexican food is a staple of Ventura. I'll tell you, my wife and I have moved away 8 years ago, so we've lived out of Ventura County for 8 years. Whenever we come home to visit, the very first place I plan the trip so that when we drive into Ventura, I am hungry and we're going to go to Corrales for a burrito. Something about their sauce, something the way how they stew their meat. There's a season there that I've yet to find anywhere else. And their breakfast burrito, I have not found anything similar anywhere else in the entire state. But above that is their hot sauce.
Okay.
Now, the hot sauce, nobody has this hot sauce. And it's funny because my son is a chef. He's an accomplished chef. And he loves this hot sauce. He's tried to reverse engineer it. And we can't figure out how to do it. So it is, I'll say I love Corrales so much that whenever I have a colleague from Ventura area come up to the Bay Area for an MSA show or something, I always ask them, can you bring some hot sauce for me? Or can you bring a burrito for me? And that's just the burrito. They have a side dish called munchers. They're like deep fried potato rounds, like hash brown potatoes, but they're little small things. And they're mixed with jalapeno and cheese. Those are to die for. I had one office worker mad at me for bringing them to the office. And she said, why did you bring these? They are so good. I can't stop eating them.
Munchers. That sounds a lot more appealing than I'm not a spicy guy, so I probably wouldn't do the hot sauce, but I'll for sure try the munchers.
Yeah. Going back to your hamburger question, I like the hamburgers at Corrales.
Okay.
Yeah. And if you put hot sauce on there, that takes it to a whole new level. So you cannot go wrong with Corrales. I had a business colleague who I met in the Bay Area, and I was talking about Corrales. And he was doing some work down in Southern California. He was down in Anaheim, and he had to drive through Ventura on his way back. He calls me and says, Carl, what's the name of this place that you're always talking about? Because I'm going to be going through Ventura. So I tell him, I give him the phone number, because I got it on speed dial on my phone. And he goes and gets it, and he calls me right after. It was so funny. He says, Carl, I am so mad. I said, why? What happened? Did you not like it? Were they not open? He goes, no, I loved it. And I'm so mad that there's no place like this in the San Jose area.
Yeah. Tell you, when you find a good spot, it can change things for sure. But Carl, thank you for hopping on the podcast. Thank you for sharing your wealth of information and knowledge. We got to do another one for sure. Any final words before we get out of here?
I really appreciate this opportunity. I really love what you're doing. I think the message of Public Works is something that not only gets underappreciated, but just really misunderstood. People just don't understand how vital Public Works is to their daily life. Every day, we are saving people's lives. We're developing people's lives. When I working with Sidewalks now, I tell people, your day did not happen without you going out onto a sidewalk or at least walk into your car. But Public Works happens before. We're talking about the water, the wastewater, your sewage, your storm drains, your trees, street lighting, traffic signals, traffic striping. So that's all Public Works. And what we do to protect communities is so vital. And a lot of people, and nothing against our safety personnel who save our lives, and whether they're police or fire personnel, but you know what? They're driving vehicles that Public Works employees are maintaining for them. I appreciate you doing this podcast because you're really just getting the message out there how important it is. I know the Public Works industry doesn't, I don't want to say they don't do enough, but if you're going to compare it to police and fire, everybody knows what they do.
Yeah.
Those of us in the Public Works world know what we do and can appreciate it, but those outside of it fully don't understand the importance of what these men and women are doing day in and day out. And we've had these heavy storms in California this last winter. I was contacting all of my former employees and just saying, thank you. Are you guys doing okay? Because I knew exactly what they were going through. And even with our client list, I'm just emailing clients and saying, not trying to sell them anything. Thank you guys for your service. I know it's hard out there. And most all of them, hey, thanks for thinking of us.
Yeah.
And that's all the message that we want as Public Works employees. Is just thanks for thinking of us. Now, things are changing with the government. There's a lot more money going into infrastructure now than has ever been into it. And we won't see the fruits of that for a few years. But there is more and more notoriety. And as we record this today, this is National Public Works Week. So we want to celebrate all the Public Works workers, but I just want to thank you because you're doing it and you just get the message out there, and I'll do my best to promote it as well and help push the message out for everybody.
Sure. Thank you. Carl, again, thank you for hopping on the show. To all the listeners out there, make sure you share this with somebody who you think needs to hear it. This has been the Public Works Podcast, and thanks for tuning in.